Hello.
Hey, Eric, how you doing?
I'm good.
Yep, how you doing, Robert?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have my camera on right now.
No worries.
Pi Day. Sorry, looking at somebody's background here.
Yeah, how could you not celebrate Pi Day? Come on.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott.
I was joking around once with my sister about Pi Day, and we were talking about, business ideas. And one of them was to have open up our own pie shop, but all the pies would be square in shape, and we'd title it Our Pie Squared.
Nerds.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right. We'll just let folks trickle in. Why don't we just dive right in? Skip the preamble here. How are you guys doing? How's your search going? Searches
It's going slow, but I did get an
still
interview
going?
Monday, so that was nice.
Yeah.
I'm I'm looking at applying for a position now that would be a step up for me, and I'm trying to figure out how to make myself look good for this because it's at a smaller place, a smaller like credit union, but it's
Step
um,
up in what sense? Like it's managing a larger team. It's moving from individual contributor into management.
it's more moving towards I'll call it almost the executive level for an information security officer,
Yeah,
where I've been a director before. So
but a smaller company this
correct,
time.
very very
Yeah.
small in comparison to what I've been working for. So
Okay.
Hey, Robert, I'm in that same place. Feel free to ping me on Slack and we can collaborate on that if you want.
yeah, I'll make sure I have your contact info here.
By the way, Scott, Tim, Robert, did you guys join with the link that was in the calendar invite?
I did.
Okay. All right.
I did as well.
Okay, cool.
Robert, was that you who had the interview? You said you had one on Monday or are having one on Monday?
No, I had one on Monday. Yeah, this one was just the first round
What was the one on Monday? That was,
uh, with the local university.
no, but was it recruiter, hiring manager, or was it?
No, it was actually with there was three different people there. The hiring manager was one of them. One of them was one of his employees, and then another one I think worked for him, but somehow related to HR as well.
Part of the reason I ask is because I had one on Monday as well. And at this point, I just feel like I'm sitting in the waiting room.
Yeah.
And it's just, I've got three opportunities in the works, and all of them I'm kind of just sitting and waiting at this point. And it is so incredibly nerve-wracking, frustrating. I could
So
go
Scott,
on.
you've had interviews and then you're just kind of in a limbo waiting mode.
Yeah, I had one on Monday with a hiring manager. I had theoretically what was the last one on Friday with the co-founder CEO at a stage B, Series B company.
Hmm.
And at this point, just sort of waiting to hear next steps.
How are the recruiters or the hiring managers, or the interviewers, managing expectations? Are they just saying, "Hey, we'll get back to you"? Are they giving you the actual timeframes? Are they giving you any indicators of the kind of where you are in the pipeline or where they are in their search?
Yeah, I have not gotten definitive feedback in either of those cases. They've sort of
Mm,
been like, we'll reach out when when the time is when the time comes. I
hmm.
did on the one on Monday that was with the hiring manager. I did reach out to the recruiter um, the next day just to say, hey, just to give you an update. So I met with the hiring manager, seemed to go well, right? And he said he didn't. I mean, he replied back, which was cool in this day and age. But he did not. He said once he hears feedback, then they'll determine next steps.
Is that an internal recruiter or an external?
Internal, yeah, internal.
Internal. Okay. A lot of times the external recruiters are a little bit more aggressive around
Yeah.
pushing things through because a
Yeah.
lot of times their compensation is dependent on that, their bonus or whatnot,
Yeah.
commission. Yeah.
In
Whereas,
in in both of these opportunities, I'm dealing with internal recruiters.
okay, okay, okay. When you guys are, do you guys look at things like Glassdoor to get a sense of what people's interview experiences have been like with a given company? Have you found that to be helpful at all?
I have not.
No.
I mean, I don't, I'll be honest, I don't tend to look at it very much, but when I do, it just seems like stuff's all over the place.
It's all over the place. Yeah. That's one thing that, when we're working with clients, that part of the candidate experience or the employer brand is something we try to manage. If there's bad reviews or negative reviews, we try to take that feedback and make sure that we're working with the team to address those things. Um, anyway, so anything I can help try to cast some light on? Any questions, situations, scenarios?
Yeah, I'll throw something at you, Eric.
Yeah, sure, Tim.
I've had this a couple times, more so in this search, where company hands it off to an external recruiter. External recruiter, let's say, reaches out on LinkedIn. I reply back going, "Hey, this sounds interesting. What's your email
Yeah.
address so we can coordinate a conversation?" And their response will be, "Well, what's your latest resume?" I'm like, "Well, what's your email address so I can send it to you?" And it's like this wonky back and forth. I'm like, not being a security privacy person, I'd rather not have these conversations in LinkedIn. Let's
Mm.
get this in email so there's some history and some easier for me to be able to find it in the future and the when it comes up again. Any
Sorry.
thoughts on why that approach is? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll comment on that in a second, Tim. Sorry, I was just laughing because it feels like you're in quicksand.
Oh, yeah. So I'm still recovering from surgery, so I'm laying down in bed here and
Oh, no worries, no
no, we're
worries.
good.
I just saw you going lower and lower and lower. Um, yeah. So it's kind of strange, Usually, usually if so sorry. Correct me if I misheard, but this recruiter reached out to you.
Yeah, yesterday is the latest one was
Okay.
yesterday
Yeah.
morning.
Okay.
I
Okay.
responded yesterday afternoon. Hey, sounds great. Sounds like it'd be in my wheelhouse. What's a good email address to, coordinate having a conversation? And her
Yeah.
response was, "Well, what's your latest resume?" I'm like, "I'm
Yep.
still going to need your email address to send this to you."
It's strange. I don't know. I mean, I could speculate either way. I mean, most recruiters have an email address. They have a
Yeah,
LinkedIn account or profile that they're using to communicate. They have a LinkedIn inbox, and most of them have an ATS that they're using, right? And
right.
so I don't know what to say. I mean, if I were you, I would glance at her profile just to kind of get kind of size her up.
Okay.
Is she a legitimate recruiter? Has she been with the company for a while? Is she somebody worth your time in terms of talking to, right? There's a lot of I don't know I don't know what the model is around it. There's a lot of folks out there that are like either pretending to be recruiters or they just want your resume for some reason. I don't
Well,
know.
from a security perspective, yeah, Eric, there's been a huge increase of people trying to do identity theft or fraud,
Mm,
preying on folks and as part of the job hunt, unfortunately. And I've dealt with that a few times in the last
yeah.
5, 6 years.
And probably a lot of unsophisticated folks that maybe they haven't never done a job search before and they're just, hoping and praying that they threw
Hmm.
their resume out everywhere and, that might be able to be used against them. So yeah, I
The
mean, that's what I
last,
would do. I was just trying to size her up, kind of get a sense if she's a legitimate recruiter. And you can
Right.
tell by her profile how long her profile's been around. Does she have it sort of filled out? And if you feel like she's legitimate, I would I mean, if you feel comfortable, or just tell her, like, if you really are uncomfortable with sharing your resume on LinkedIn, you can explain it to her and whatnot. But um, generally speaking, I would just follow their sort of protocol or whatever process they might have in place just to minimize the friction for them. But if you have, if you have concerns about, your resume getting out there or just some security concerns, and you'll probably explain it to her.
Yeah, I last week when I actually talked to you, I was experiencing similar things, and I was asking you about, recruiters and how to kind of vet them out and things like that. And I think one of the things that you said to me actually resonated, maybe you didn't, but maybe somebody else mentioned it around that time, was basically if these are external recruiters that are kind of competing to fill that position for a company,
Yeah.
then they're trying to get your information as quickly as they can so they can get it in before you go talk to some other recruiter. And so it's
Yeah.
like this mad rush to get your information
Yeah.
before they even know if you're qualified, so to speak.
Yeah. And here's the thing, if you have an unscrupulous kind of agency, maybe they do or maybe they don't have a relationship with that client, right? If let's say they have a relationship, maybe it's not the best relationship, but maybe they have a signed engagement. If they put somebody in, right, then it automatically, in most cases, it automatically disqualifies any other channels, any other contingency recruiting channels for them to represent you to that client. And so a lot of times, an external recruiting agency or recruiter will ask you, "Oh, hey, Robert, are you talking with anybody now at XYZ company?" Right? Because they'll want to understand, like, if you're already talking to them, and then they'll ask you, "Oh, yeah, I'm talking with them." Okay, so how long are you talking with them? Will you submit? They'll try to get a sense of whether they can if they have a chance at claim on representing you. So
Yeah,
that's the motivation behind some of those questions if they start asking you that,
right.
you know.
Yeah. In my particular case, last week, I actually had two people from the same recruiting company contact me.
Mhm.
One was stateside, the other was out of India. And so they're,
India's probably sourcing, maybe stateside, they're the actual recruiter.
yeah. But it was just funny because it was for the same position, even though they titled it slightly differently, but the job requirements were exactly the same. And it took me a while to kind of figure it out. And then I finally asked, and, is this, what company you're, working through? And then they're like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm working with so and so. And they're like, oh, sorry, then work with them. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they get their wires crossed, especially if it's a larger third party
Yeah.
recruiting firm.
But
And
it
then,
seemed to be like this mad rush at first to get your resume. And I don't know.
yeah, that's the whole contingency model, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, clients that are working with multiple contingency agencies, firms, they're doing that because they want to sort of cast a wide net, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it has its trade-offs. It can create a lot of overhead for the hiring manager to sort of sort through the noise, because then you have all these agencies like throwing stuff over the wall over to you, right? And so
Mhm.
yeah, it just creates different channel conflict or whatever. Hi, Christopher. We're just fielding any questions you guys might have about recruiting or the process or mindset or what recruiters look for. Anything I can help with? So, if you guys don't have any questions, I'll use this time to ask you guys questions. Um, just to raise a hand, like, or just a sense of where you guys are at in your sort of job search journey. I guess raise of hands, like how many folks are actively interviewing right now? Like you have interviews or have had interviews. Okay, Tim, you're just getting started, yeah. Um, and then anyone receive any offers yet or no? Okay, any final round interviews? Few final round. Okay, okay. Um, as far as like as you're going through the process of going through the process of interviewing, and then I would imagine you're still sort of working other top of the funnel stages, right, for other prospects.
Mhm.
Um, how much are you guys personalizing, for example, your resume? for a given search or I'm sorry, a given position?
For me, every single job I apply for is the resume
You're
is personalized.
personalizing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it takes me a lot longer, so I don't apply to as many positions
Okay.
because I'm also trying to, reach out to people who might know somebody who works at the company and see if I can get connected somehow that way as well. Kind of doing the networking route at the same time and personalizing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Scott, I think you're
I am
personalizing.
personalizing as well.
Okay. Christopher, I would
Trying
imagine
to
you're
find that
personalizing.
balance, to be honest with you, between personalizing and time, because it
It does.
Takes time.
does
Yeah.
take
Takes time.
Yeah,
If you
at
had to
my end,
estimate,
I have I'd say there's like two or three different types of roles that I'm really sort of very focused on going after. I have versions of my resume that have been sort of targeted to those three types of roles with slightly different language associated with them. And then I do also then do a little bit of personalization, primarily in sort of that executive summary section at the beginning. Uh,
okay.
and that's the strategy that I've found to work the best. I think you can spend all day really trying to hone it and get it really great, but the reality I've found is that that doesn't lead to that many more sort of connections. You're better off spending the time on either trying to network in as well or, something else like that.
Okay. When you guys are customizing a resume, for example, what are you using as your inputs to customize it? I would imagine the job description at least.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Highly focused on the job description.
Yeah,
Job
same here.
description.
The job description, and then I also look a little bit at the company like motto or other information that they release about the company, just kind of show what they focus on, where
Okay.
their priorities are.
So like their website, you look at their website, get a sense of their vision or motto, and
Exactly.
yeah,
Try
okay.
to
And whether
incorporate
that
some of
goes in the resume
their,
or that goes in the cover letter.
yeah, try to
Got it.
incorporate some of their language, right?
Yep.
When using specific language around things.
Okay. When you say the language, is it just like jargon, or is it more like you try to get a sense of their culture based on the sort of the voice or tone of the copy on their website?
For me, it's not necessary. I don't know if I would refer to it as culture so much as positioning, right? Sort of how they positioning themselves and then using that same
Mm,
language to sort of say, right? Like,
okay.
hey, I want to help you, blah, right? Whatever that blah
Scott, can
refers
I
to.
ask? That's interesting that you said that, but one question I have is, are you looking at like marketing roles or public relations roles?
Product.
Okay, product roles. The only reason I'm asking is that, depending upon what type of roles you're looking for, the marketing and sort of the way the company presents may or may not align with how the team that you're looking to join would represent themselves.
That's
Um,
true.
yeah, so it's just something to be a little bit careful of because I've seen in particular some internal teams that their strategy is very different than what externally facing documentation might lead you to believe.
Yeah, that's fair.
The
So
other,
in addition, oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say, I've also made a major shift as far as my focus now, but mine's more as a result of pulling a bunch of people that I know. I know probably about 30 people in the last 6 months who either lost their job or quit and are looking, were looking for jobs.
Yeah.
And most of those people were working remotely before. And of those who have new jobs now, which is, a decent percentage, 100% of them found their job locally. They are not working 100% remote anymore.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And so that's kind of shifted my focus as a result. Because, I do currently have the LinkedIn Pro, and on there you can actually see how many people have at least clicked the apply button, if
Hmm.
not applied. And it's not been very encouraging, some of the
Yeah.
numbers that I'm seeing on there, other applicants.
Yeah.
And, for positions that are local, those numbers are obviously going to be much, much lower. So who you're competing with is much lower.
Okay.
So that's
Ralph,
just my change in strategy. That's all.
okay. Ralph, Brandon, welcome. Thanks for joining us. There was
Yeah,
no
sorry, I
question,
was
so I
late.
started asking the group questions. And the question was, in terms of personalizing your resume, what inputs do you factor in to personalize your resume? I think the obvious thing is the job description, but the folks here were talking a little bit about looking at the website, some of the jargon and language used on their website, their motto. So in addition to that, you guys, anything else that you guys use for input to personalize a resume?
So what I have started doing, actually earlier this week, is setting Google alerts for all of my target companies, right? So I can see what kind of news is happening, what they've been doing in the marketplace, what they're
Mm.
focusing on. Then I take that and look at their website and like the latest news and things like that that are coming out, and then try to weave that in as best I can into the things that I have done, that
Mhm.
might resonate with them to personalize it.
You'll weave that into your resume. You'll weave that into your resume.
Yeah,
That's great. Okay.
right. Just the types of activities and that sort of thing. If I've done any of
Yeah.
that, I'm gonna kind of call that
Yeah.
out, um,
That's great.
kind of in my summary.
Okay. If you guys have to, I'll put it back to you guys in terms of questions. Sorry, I'm just kind of picking your guys' brains here because we're working on some stuff here, so it's very helpful. As far as like how long you spend on personalizing your resume, is that on the order of minutes or is it in the order of hours or days? Like, how would
Well,
you
for me,
ballpark
mine
that?
used to be hours, and
Hours?
now I just try to focus on the summary, because what I try to do is get a generic one. I had a resume written for me, and it's very generic and speaks to my strengths, but it also speaks to what's going on in the marketplace and what a lot of
Yeah.
companies are looking for. But that tailoring thing is very, very time consuming, and you get
Yeah.
fewer resumes out, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get the resumes out and then trying to network with folks in those organizations, whether I know them or not.
The research that you guys are doing leading up to personalizing your resume, is that valuable in and of itself? Or is that something like if you had some assistant doing this for you just to get the resume in, and you would just do you would just do the research on the back end once you get a call back or get lined up for an interview, then you'll do the research. Would that work better, or is the research that you're doing up front critical to not just personalizing the resume, but also making a decision about whether you apply to that company or not? Does that make sense?
I would say for me, the research up front is pretty minimal. I mean,
It's
it's
minimal.
90% job description, 10% research.
Okay,
Okay, then once it becomes interview phase, much more on the research.
got it. Okay.
Same here. I sometimes I know the company well because I know them from other dealings in the past, but it just really depends. To your exact question though about, having an assistant help with that stuff, I'm not sure that I would want to go that route, whether it was AI or, um, you know, or like even like a personal assistant that you find and pay somehow. And I think the reason is that I really think it's important that for this process you are able to represent who you are. And I think that that's pretty key to it. um, yeah.
Represent who you are on paper, like on the resume and the application, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, and you don't know what opportunities you're missing out on if you don't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that for me is kind of key.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, no, I appreciate the feedback. Sorry, I'll turn it back on you guys. Um, Ralph, again, any open to any questions, thoughts, concerns, situations that maybe I can shed some light on?
So, and I asked the group kind of earlier, that I was on, because I've just been invited and accepted an advisory board role, right? It's non-paid, and it's really just to keep my skills going as I'm looking for. Because I've passed a year now, and I just I want to get it on my LinkedIn profile. I want to get it on my resume, but I don't want to give the impression that I'm not still looking, because I am. So how, as a recruiter, would you feel that you're not confused in the way that I listed it? Like, should it be, because should I say it's a volunteer? I mean, I just don't know. I'm struggling with that because I don't want to give the impression that I'm not
So
still
the title is
looking.
like a board of advisor, advisory role, board of
Advisory board.
advisor, advisory board. I mean, it's pretty common. Like I've seen that a lot on people's LinkedIn profiles and resumes where they'll have concurrent, whatever date to present, whatever date to present, whatever date to present. And I assume that, they're not all full-time jobs,
Right.
so it's not that confusing, especially if the title is like, advisory board member or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
so maybe I'm just overthinking it.
perhaps I I I don't know. I mean, if you have a consistent title progression or title consistency, let's just say product manager, right? Product manager, senior product manager, director of product, and then you have advisory, board of advisors or something. Like, I mean, I'll speak for myself. Like, I know enough to know that, and I would hold that in high regard that, at least on the surface, that, that you're, um, that people think highly enough of you in terms of your expertise, insight, and experience that they'd want you as an advisor to their company or to their organization. So I think one, it speaks highly, so I think it lends credibility. But two, I don't think it's that uncommon. I don't think that it's that
Confusing.
confusing. Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
it's that
All
confusing.
right. Yeah, I think I'm just being overly paranoid just because I've been out so long, and I don't want to
Yeah.
give the impression that I'm not looking because I'm absolutely looking.
Would that be
If you're
better?
concerned about it, oh, go ahead, Robert.
I was just asking, would that be better to put under professional experience or under volunteering as the section?
Yeah, I was going to ask that question.
Yeah.
It
I,
depends probably what the role is, right? So it's an advisory position, but is it in something that you're professionally skilled at slash
yeah, it's in marketing services.
okay, so it's
And
in your industry. So
right,
yeah, and
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, as opposed to being like a hobby, for example, that
right.
there's a
Yeah,
board of advisors for or whatever else.
yeah. I always thought about it as a positive because then it shows that I am still doing something, I'm keeping current and that sort of thing. But the confusion for me is that I just don't want it to look like, okay, oh, he's employed now. Because I have gotten that feedback when the company made the announcement. Oh, I'm glad that you landed. And I'm like, no, this is it's just an advisory board. Still looking.
Yeah, if I saw advisory board as a title and I saw advisor in the description
Hmm.
versus like consultant, if I saw consultant, contractor, that would speak like, oh, he's probably employed either at least part
Hmm.
time with the company. But
Yeah.
advisor, it's more like it doesn't ring as like it's a part time job. It's more like,
Okay.
yeah, you're
Right.
like an esteemed advisor.
Okay.
Well, and I
Yeah.
don't think it necessarily would hurt even if somebody thought it was some kind of position. It's, as long as you have the, open to work, maybe on the recruiter side at least, or the banner. And the fact that you're applying for a job tells them that you're looking for
Yeah.
work. So,
Hmm. Yeah, but I'm just thinking about, if I didn't apply and a recruiter does a search and they, because I've taken the open to work off and I haven't turned it on for recruiters because I wanted to have it, get my LinkedIn profile redone along with my resume.
mhm.
And I will turn the open to work back on for recruiters only though.
Yeah. My understanding, and maybe, can be corrected on this, is that recruiters will search by job titles and, in that way, it's kind of finding keywords that match with what they're looking for. So if you have that job title from other positions, you would still show up, I would think.
Yeah, you do. The thing is like right now, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Like, there's a difference between a sourcer and a recruiter, and typically the sources are like just the lead gen people, right? They're just scouring whatever. They're scouring either like LinkedIn or they're just going through inbound stacks of resumes and they're sourcing, right? They're just sort of pre-screening, pre-qualifying based on the resume or paper, right? And then the recruiter usually is the one that's eventually engaging with the candidate, right? Um, but as far as like you know, nowadays, right? Like if a recruiter finds your resume or your LinkedIn profile, a lot of times they won't. they'll feel pretty confident that they can get you on the phone, because there's just enough sort of that balance of the power balance between employer and candidate has shifted over the past 2 years. Whereas before, like 4 years ago, right? If I'm if I'm looking for somebody on LinkedIn, I'm not confident that I can get them on the phone because people are so happily employed and they're making good money and they get hounded by recruiters. Whereas now it's like, it's the other way around. And so,
Hmm.
so yeah, I don't think, having open to work or not having it on is going to be a deterrent. If a recruiter looks at your resume and thinks, oh, you're a strong fit, I think they'll feel pretty confident they can get you on the phone.
I was going to go back to your kind of tailoring resume question that you were asking.
Oh yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I like to do is I'll take the job description and throw it into, like ChatGPT or some AI and
Mhm.
have it pull out the key words and skills. And so that way I can make sure I integrate those keywords and skills into my resume.
Do you take it the next step further, Robert, as far as like, okay, give me the list of keywords and skills, and now look at my resume and start to pepper it where appropriate?
Yeah, I will have it analyze my resume for that and see,
Yeah.
where that might fit in, and give me suggestions. But I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 on that, whether or not, what it produces is accurate for what I've done, accurate technology wise, like the
Yeah.
appropriate use of terminology and, things like that. So it's kind of a balance in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm on the same boat. I will definitely ask for suggestions, but in most cases, what it gives back, I would never use verbatim.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, it takes the same line and repeats it 3 times, throughout the process, just rewording it in different sections and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, especially from hey, what keywords and that sort of thing do I need to focus on? Super helpful. Any real hard, like, do it like this usually doesn't really fly.
Okay. And Chris, does that sort of dovetail into kind of your concern about, how an automated agent might misrepresent you, or just maybe it's not trustworthy to represent you in the best light because it's making weird mistakes or weird repetitive things?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I think that, like you say, you don't want an agent or other tool to make some kind of a mistake or to use my struggle with a lot of these AI tools is that the language they use is not in any person's voice, right? It's just so
Mhm.
generic and so sort of canned. And I feel like that's a huge issue. You go on LinkedIn and you look at all these images people generate, and you can clearly tell that they're AI images,
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's a lot that needs to happen, I think, before that industry really um, could take that kind of a place.
Yeah.
I see AI as sort of like almost like the equivalent of an intern, right? Where you have to really closely watch what comes off of it and then use it and modify it as needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it's possible to just take it, at face value, and we have to be the humans in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Eric, I'd like
Oh,
to turn the question back on you, and that
yeah.
is especially around specification or specific to the posting as a recruiter. How specific would you expect, or how would you prioritize differently resumes that are clearly specific to the posting versus
Yeah.
some more generic but has good experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, as a first pass, it's looking for check boxes, right? Well, initially it's looking for anything that might disqualify the person,
Yeah.
almost any excuse. And I hate to say this, right? But it's the truth. If somebody's trying to get from a stack of 500 down to 50, they're just kind of cruising through it, whether they're using some sort of assistant to do that or whatnot. A lot of times the first pass is just trying to figure that out, right? And so, the next pass would be to look at, how the person's experience lines up with either the culture of the company, the position, the scope, the kind of accomplishments. The more that the person can visualize you being a fit for the company or the role, then they'll feel better about it. And, especially if that recruiter or the hiring manager wrote the job description, assuming that, they did it with some conscientiousness, right? It's not just some copy and paste from some other random job description, which happens. But if they actually took the time to write the job description and it's in their voice, in the culture's voice, and it really represents, most of the needs of the team and the hiring manager, then to the effect that you can emulate that, right? Because if I wrote that job description and now I see your resume is, using a lot of the same language, at least as a first, maybe a second pass, like I'll feel confident about it. Because there's a lot of resumes that don't, right? They're not using the same language, the same, they're not speaking to the same, how do you say it? Like in the same voice, right?
How frequently do you find, Eric, that the recruiters or that recruiters in general have enough domain experience to be able to really suss that out, though? And that's sort of the counter to that point, right? Like if you make it exactly what they've asked for, well, at least they can check whether or not it's what they asked for. Versus if it's more general, you can't always assume that. People have the domain experience to be able to figure out what those cross-functional skills really are.
Yeah, I think that's a good question you raised because a part of it is sizing up the recruiter, right? If they're just out of school, chances are they don't have as much domain expertise or understanding of the lingo and sort of the nuance of what the team might be looking for and what would be successful at the team on the team. So, somebody that's more experienced, even if it's just in recruiting, right? They don't have to be from a technical background or actually having worked in that function. If they were just more experienced as far as recruiter, they'll pick up on sort of what's important because they go through so many cycles, right? If they've been doing it for 5, 10 years, chances are unless they've weaved in and out of different industries. But if for the most part, let's say they've hired in tech, or maybe they've hired engineers in tech for the past 5 or 10 years. They've gone through a lot of cycles of working with hiring managers as well as interviewing candidates. So they even though they've maybe never coded themselves, they have a good sense and intuition about, what somebody's talking about from a technical perspective. Even though they might not know specifically what they're talking about, they can have a feeling of whether the person knows what they're talking about. And they've gone through so many cycles with the hiring manager to kind of validate that. They don't have to be domain experts to be effective in recruiting technical people. Technical being even software, or marketing, or whatever, right? But as far as like, was that your question, Chris?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I guess the one piece of it you didn't quite answer was how often do you find that recruiters are experienced versus not, right? So there are both sides, but I've seen some statistics that suggest that, the vast majority of first round screens happen by people who have like less than 3 years experience
So
recruiting or something like that.
yeah,
Is that
I think
true?
that's fair. I think that's fair. But here's how this is going to change. I think very quickly. I think in all functions, whether it's recruiting, engineering, graphic design, product management, I think what you're going to start to see is that middle, even lower tier of experienced folks. Um, the teams are going to be less comprised of that, if that makes sense. If you think of a normal team, software engineering team, you might have this, I don't know, normal distribution of seniority, right? I think what's going to end up happening is that teams are going to go from 10 to let's say 5, and those 5 they're going to bias to more of the senior, I think that's what's going to happen because a lot of the work can be done by AI. Like the screening, like you're going to hire somebody out of school. 5 years ago, you'd hire somebody that's out of school to do your sourcing or your screening as a junior recruiter or whatever. So now, I think that job is going to largely go away. And the capabilities of the more senior recruiters, just in this example, they'll just be overseeing these agents or these AI or even these, maybe mid-level recruiters that are being enabled by these advancements in AI and these different tools. I think that's the way it's going to go. And so, whatever it may be the case a year ago or even now, I think it's going to evolve and teams are going to get smaller and they're going to be headed up by more experienced folks. You look at attorneys, right? Like, yeah. So it's going to be really strange. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I mean, just talk in my conversations with folks, like it feels like that's the way it's going to go.
Is it more specialization in there too?
I think it's, so I had a conversation with a friend of mine. She's heavy into AI. She has a small team of like 20, relatively small team of like 20 folks. And I was asking her that same question. And because the thing I've been touting as a recruiter is like, oh, companies hire specialists for their roles, which I think is still true. I think the roles are going to evolve. The definition of the roles are going to evolve to be less specialists and more generalists. So what she was saying is that the how do you say it? The lines between these siloed functions are blurring, and they're blurring because let's say for product management, right? A typical product team, you might have a product manager that's running, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 person engineering team, let's say, for example, right? And now that engineering team is probably going to slim down a bit. And maybe that product manager now can power more engineering teams. Whereas maybe they were powering one engineering team, maybe they can power now 2 engineering teams. And even still, and like the lines between what an engineer, product manager does, she was suggesting is blurring, because now with these tools, a product manager can do design, and they might not do the design to 99%, but they can maybe do it to 85, 90%. And that's good enough to just keep things going. And then you have that higher level designer that's taking it from 90% to 99%, right? So she was saying that her theory, and I think her theory is sound, is that companies are going to want more generalization among their leadership or among their team, and their teams are going to be biased towards people that are more experienced, and particularly they know how to work in an AI. They basically know how to not just manage people and processes, but they know how to manage AI employees, right? And they know where AI employees can be slotted into the organization or the workflows to achieve that level of productivity. So yeah, this is something that's fascinating to me because we're trying to develop solutions where it's a moving target now, like, right? So it's one thing to like say, oh, like I'm a product manager and these are the skills and this is the career path. It's always been the career path. Whatever, you go from associate to mid to senior to director to whatever, and the scope evolves as such as well. But I think these things are kind of evolving. It's kind of a moving target, and so we're looking at ways that we can kind of get out ahead of that, so that we can help folks sort of understand what those paths might look like and how they can position and either retool or upskill themselves. Yeah, it's a crazy time right now. But anyway, just brain dump, Robert, of some thoughts there. How does that align with what you guys are seeing, or misalign? Because you guys have, I mean, obviously worked on teams before. Maybe you guys have built teams before. Um,
I know for me, the teams that I've managed have been asked to do more with less.
more with less.
And so they're having to learn additional skills um, just to stay up with the expectations of the role, because the role is evolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sorry, my something's wrong with my camera, otherwise I'll have it on. But But yeah, that's what I'm seeing, right? And even when I look at director level roles that are written like VP roles, right? It's the directors are expected to do more than they were in the past.
Ralph, question about the more with less. When you say you've seen that team members are being asked to do more with less, is
Mhm.
the more like more volume or more as in a broader scope of ownership or responsibility, or both?
It's both, right? Because when you like, let's say, you launch a product, and normally, you have your tech support team and your application scientists and field support. At least in my field, they normally will, you train them, but then they're normally doing it. What's happening now is there are less of those people, so the product managers are expected to now, and they should travel with the team initially, but not sitting on every sales calls and actually doing the sales because they know more about the product, right? And so, um, so that's the more, in terms of responsibility and scope.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting.
Because even if you have enough volume for it to add a head count, you're not allowed to add a head count, simply because the team has already been performing, so they just think they can dump and give you more and it'll still get done,
Yeah.
and people then start to burn out.
Yeah, I've talked to a decent number of people in the organization where I was laid off from, and they cut a third of the people, and the people who remained, well, there's actually some people who left after that just because the culture change and the amount of work. But now the people who are there, they are expected to do quite a bit more as far as volume and breadth of what they're covering, because there's not any prospect of bringing anybody on board anytime soon at this point.
And
They're
what is their immediate reaction or solution to that?
well, the people I've talked to are, they're quite frustrated by it, as
Sure.
far as especially the volume, because they're just saying it's a lot more stressful environment than what it used to be. And then as far as the expecting them to cover the things that they don't they don't know, those things they're just like they said they're just trying their best to try to pick up some of it, but they know they're not going to do as good of a job as the people who were covering those things before. And so they're
Yeah. I mean, I have a theory that, the folks that are being asked to do more with less volume and breadth, like I think the emergent skill that's going to be quite valuable. And everybody says AI, which I think there's truth to that, but it's also like understanding like how do you integrate that into basically your function so now you can delegate and you don't have to do that anymore, and it's almost like giving birth or creating your own tools or products or services that effectively does your work for you so you can move on to other things. I think that's going to be a valuable skill.
yeah,
My friend I was talking to, like they're a very AI forward company, and she challenged her SDR team. I think she has like a 5-person SDR team. I forget, but she challenged them with basically creating something that replaces what they do. And so they created this bot auto outbound caller and scheduler, and they did it in a week, and already it was performing better than they were doing. And so that their team now they've sort of taken the role as far as like being the human in the loop, and they're now fielding the questions or the calls uh, that the bot was not able to handle or whatnot. So it's basically elevating them after they've created something that sort of did their job for them. And so I don't know, maybe that's uh, maybe that's an example of like what might happen in the future with a lot of different roles. I don't know, but I thought it was really interesting to kind of see that.
I know there's an
Um,
organization that I was interested in called ServiceNow.
yeah,
And they have these bots that when I was watching the the kind of demo that, let's say in my industry, if somebody has a technical support question, they build a knowledge bank that the bot accesses and can actually go ahead, and answer that question for the person and get back to them quicker. And if there's
Yeah.
further follow-up that needs to happen, then it goes into a queue and the people can take care of that. But the customer is getting, responses a lot sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually the place I'm currently interviewing with is on the sales side, but it's a very similar idea. It's using agentic AI at top of the funnel, right, to do a lot of the sort of, grunt work, repetitive type work, if you will, until something is in a position to hand off to a rep to actually have a informed conversation. So very similar to what you're talking about, Eric. And yeah, I think that's, where a lot of these things are going to work, quite frankly.
Quick question, just to get you guys' sort of initial reactions or impressions. What if you guys as a, uh, let's say a professional, don't have to be a job seeker, but maybe you are in a position where you're seeking a next position. But as a professional, what if you had an agent that was representing you?
Absolutely. 100%. Yesterday, one of the first job boards that I've signed up for in forever was, hey, we'll use you give us certain details and we'll use AI to scrape the web and find stuff for you. 100%.
Or maybe I can clarify, Scott. So what if you had like you, Scott, as a
Yeah.
professional, and let's say you're a professional, but you're also a job seeker, you're actively looking for your
Yeah.
next position. What if I, as a recruiter, in the middle of the night, I'm doing some recruiting. I see Scott's profile, your profile. I'm like, oh, I have a few questions. And I fire off a few questions. And time is of the essence, let's say, for example. And I'm not interacting with you, the person, because you're sleeping. But I'm
Yep.
acting with your agent, your bot, so to speak, right?
Yep.
And I can get whatever questions, let's say 90% or 99% of the questions that I would have as a recruiter answered by this bot that's representing you. And that bot knows everything about you. Like,
Yeah.
what would your initial reaction be to having that bot represent you at the top of the funnel?
As long as it was intelligent enough to know when you are not a reputable recruiter, I'd be okay with it. Because quite frankly, that's, not a small, insignificant chunk of the work. But yeah, no, absolutely.
Chris, what would your reactions be? I know you had some reservations about maybe AI representing you on paper.
I mean, I'm certain, I say this, right? But at the same time, I do use these tools, right? And I think we all do in our own ways. My challenge is still that, again, it depends on the industry. I come from an industry that's pretty regulated. I'm in the
Mhm.
medical device industry, and so I am very much attuned to kind of this idea that you know what, a lot of these things can come out and they can do interesting stuff, but in terms of being able to generate something where it acts on your own behalf, right? Like, can you imagine, for example, in the medical device industry, there's the FDA, right? And they regulate what we can and can't say about our products.
Mm,
We
yeah.
have an intended use statement, and I can't imagine a bot, um, you know, sort of being there and this agent being there and someone asking the agent questions while I sleep and really going down the rabbit hole with this agent about, all these different things. They end up getting the agent to claim something that the device or assay
This is
isn't.
about your career, not about your offering. This is about you. It's
Well, no, but Eric was saying could you have the agent work on your behalf while you were sleeping?
no,
And
no,
this
no. I
is
think you
even
meant
in
that
a
was,
work setting.
and maybe I
Oh, yeah.
misunderstood. I thought it was part of just, hey, I'm a
Yeah. So, so,
recruiter.
so initially, right? Maybe the scope of the work is just representing you to a recruiter that might have
Yeah,
some cursory questions
Yeah,
about
yeah.
what are you looking for in your
yeah.
next position, blah, 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 right?
Okay, so
But I
if it
mean,
was about me, I mean, I might be okay with it. Just in terms of like you said, the very early part of the pipeline,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
when you get later on in that process that it might get a little bit sticky. And also, in a professional context, just to finish the really small piece of my point was that the FDA could come in and close down a technology based on a claim that a bot made, and
yeah,
I would hate to be the first company that has that happen to them.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. A question for you guys. Beyond your resume, let's say, and your LinkedIn profile, are there other digital representations of you that are public that you rely on as part of, your job search process?
I don't think we have a choice. I mean, anything that's online that's publicly available about us is fair game.
Yeah. But is there anything that you manipulate or you manage
I don't
with the
personally, of
intention of
course,
job searching? Obviously, you
I
do that for
don't
your
personally,
resume.
but a lot of roles are going to have portfolios and websites. I don't
Okay.
need those
Okay.
in my role, but sure, a lot of them would. Yeah.
Okay. Robert, Chris, you guys don't use anything else other than your LinkedIn profile, really, and your resume to represent you as part of the job search process?
Nothing on purpose.
Nothing on purpose. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have a small site that I use that just has it's just my own personal landing page, really.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think there is yeah.
Okay.
So
All
I'm
right.
I'm
Cool.
actually Eric, in the process of I
Yeah.
found this job that I really am very interested in. It's not necessarily in the field that I've been in before, but one I'm very interested in. It has to do with clinical trials, diversity in clinical trials, et cetera. And I like the company because they don't necessarily want a resume. There's not any real job requirements. So they want, in one of the positions I'm looking at, they wanted you to, they said it would be nice if you could create a loom, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to do kind of a journey of my career, and then end and why I'm actually interested in working for that
Yeah.
organization, and then end with my resume, just at the very back end if they want to watch it. But I want to try to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Two
I
to three
want it to
minute
make
video.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Do they give
Mhm.
you a script for it, like answer certain
No,
questions, or it's just open
mm-mm.
ended?
No, it's open ended, and to
Okay.
talk about something that you're very proud that you created,
Yeah. Yeah. So
which I
that's kind
thought
of what
was
I
a
was.
very different approach than
Yeah.
normally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's kind of what I was getting at. Like,
Mhm.
resumes, LinkedIn profiles tend to be very, very flat, right? And they don't really capture the essence of who you are. And, so in order to do that, I have to get on a phone call with you or exchange emails or
Mhm.
whatnot. And in this day and age, I think there may be opportunity to have a more of a refined, high fidelity digital representation of who you are. And that could be in the form of a short Loom video or whatever,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, I think, yeah, as a recruiter, it'd be interesting for me to either connect with something that's higher fidelity than a LinkedIn resume. Obviously, I want to connect with the person, but there might be something intermediary between a resume and the actual person
Mhm.
that can help refine my decision-making process as a recruiter or a hiring manager.
Yeah. And I
Um,
also want to include a little bit about, kind of my hobbies and that sort of thing. And I'll do the voiceover, um, myself, because on the Loom you can appear up in the corner, and so they'll see a
yeah,
live person. Um,
yeah,
yeah, and then just keep it short because they only have a period, short period of time to really review it. But I feel like in this market, you have to find things that are
yeah,
differentiating than other people.
totally, totally. And it's kind of cool that they're asking for this. And here's the thing, like
Hmm.
you don't have to be asked by a company to do this in order for you to do
You can
it,
just do it.
right?
Yeah.
You could just do it, do a Loom video, 2 to 3 minutes, QR code it, put that QR code on your resume. And I don't, as a recruiter, I hardly see QR codes on resumes. It's rare. So if I saw one, I'd be like, oh, what's that? I might take my phone up to it, and now you basically, you basically hijacked and created a one-way asynchronous interview with that recruiter.
Interesting, because I initially had a QR code on my resume. It was actually just going to my LinkedIn, and the suggestions I received were actually to remove it because it would confuse ATS scanners. I don't know if that's true or not, but so I actually removed it. But I do like your idea of kind of hijacking the experience of the recruiter. And
People don't do it. People
Yeah.
don't do it. I recommended it to a guy in my JSC. He did it. And that's how he landed the interview and how he landed his job offer and ultimately his job. People
Yeah.
don't do it.
Because not many people are doing it, right? I mean, I think
No.
it's becoming more common, but not many people are really doing it.
And the reason people don't do it, well, apart from not having the idea or yeah, having heard of that idea, is that they get uncomfortable with being on video.
Yeah.
And and the people that are at least a little bit comfortable with being on video will do it, and now they have a leg up on the 99% of the people that don't do it, you know? So here's the thing, like again, as a recruiter, if I ran into a resume, I see all the standard stuff, a link, an email address, phone number, whatever, accomplishments, but it's rare that I see a QR code on there. And if I do, maybe like you said, Robert, it is a QR code to their LinkedIn profile, which isn't too big of a deal, right? But if
Yeah.
it's a QR code to some sort of quick intro video, now it comes to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've hijacked the process, right? You're effectively hijacking the process and bringing that recruiter or that hiring manager into your world now. You have a captive audience. Now you're showing up as a video and you're talking. It's asynchronous, right? But you're
Yeah.
talking now to them, and they can see your energy. They can see your personality. They can, see how articulate you are or whatever, right? Like, so now you leave an impression, right? And so you've already advanced yourself in the process
Yeah.
by hijacking it. So,
I-
And on a lot of applications now, they're saying they have a website listed, right? Or a
yeah,
field for a website, and I think you could just paste that link in there, to that Loom video, and
yeah,
that can be your website.
yeah, yeah. So just a thought.
Yeah. So Ralph, did you mention was the product like a loom or something? Where were you mentioning that?
Yeah, it's like a Loom, and it's free, right? I mean, if you can pay if you're going to do a whole bunch of videos, right? But
Sure.
if you just type in Loom on YouTube, they can actually take you through, how to create one,
Okay.
you can do screen recording. So if you have like the animation like I want to have, as the animation's happening, then I'm going to go through and talk about it, and then at the end I'll just close the screen share, with my resume and a bit about me personally and that sort of thing.
Okay.
You end up doing it, Robert. I'd love to, you know, keep track of like, how what you did, how you're doing it, what lift you might be seeing, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you become comfortable with the Robert, you can actually do one for each job. It doesn't take that
Yeah.
long, right? Because you just want a little brief introduction. You want to differentiate yourself. Um, and this is going to be the first one that I've done. I've heard of people doing it, but I've not done one. And this one, this company, which I'm really interested in, they asked, it'd be great if you could do a loan.
Fascinating. Yeah. When you finish that up, or let me know. I'd love to
Okay,
take a peek at what kind of things, ideas you have.
sure.
Yeah. This
I'll,
would
I'll,
yeah
I'll,
definitely be outside my comfort zone, but that's okay.
I'll make one
Yeah.
comment. So the gentleman that was in my JSC that I recommend him do this, he didn't do it through Loom, but it's still the same sort of uh, path, right? He had a QR code, and it went to two videos. One video was a video that he helped produce as part of his company, his previous company, that gave a sense of the culture of the company. And he was an integral part of that, and because of his position. The other video that he had was just a personal video about where he lives, gives you a sense of his personality, his values. He showcased his family. And not to say that you have to do that, but what I'm saying is that it's kind of a blank canvas, right?
Yeah.
And he took the tact of sort of a professional side that showed the kind of culture that he worked in. And then he did a personal one. And again, these were short. They were like a minute or two,
Yeah.
maybe 3 minutes. And it showed sort of his personal culture side, right?
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of. And so it gives a lot of dimension to his resume and his application, right? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, anyway, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this, but the point is a lot of people don't do this.
I like it a lot. That was one of my complaints this whole process, when after I got laid off, I haven't looked for work in 20 years. So
Mhm.
coming back to this is like, ooh, this is all so different. And I've always felt that the process is very impersonal.
Yeah.
Applications and cover letters and just the whole thing about it. Everything is very impersonal and so this sounds like it, can kind of bridge that, what I feel like is this big gap to make it more personal.
Yeah. And I
But it's
think,
gotten even worse actually lately, Robert, in terms of being impersonal.
Mhm.
People don't get back to you.
Oh,
People
all the
ghost
time.
you.
yeah.
I mean, it's just, yeah, just
Oh,
no common courtesy at all anymore.
oh yeah. No, I've been ghosted on so many jobs. I lost count a long time ago. So, and yeah, whether it was just from the application or after, first round interview or something like that. It's even after, I reach out multiple times, but
Yeah, I
I,
mean, to me, it's just as simple as hitting, and maybe Eric, you can speak to this. It's just as simple as hitting a form letter, filling
yeah.
your name in, and saying, we moved on with other candidates, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
leave the candidate in limbo.
Yeah. Gives you
And
closure.
that's,
Yeah.
Hmm.
it's, yeah, I think,
Is it a
it,
time factor, Eric?
yeah, I
Because they
mean, to
have
your
so
point
many?
earlier, I think well, maybe this is your point, or I forgot whose point this was earlier, being asked to do more with less. I
Hmm.
think, even internal recruiting teams are getting slimmed down,
Mhm.
and the recruiters that are on the job are asking to do more with less. And again, I'm not defending them, but just to give some perspective of what the situation might be. And it does reflect badly on the recruiter, it reflects badly on the company, right? And so that's one of the things that there's automations there that could be put, and even to your point, Ralph, like even if it's just a simple email for some closure, a lot of
Hmm.
that could be automated, and at minimum, it could be automated and sent just so the candidate has some closure and knows that they don't need to spend more time or thought,
Hmm.
um, with that lead, right? So yeah, if you've interviewed with a company, you spent time talking to a human being, the least they could do is send you, hey, this is kind of our situation. We've moved on, and best of luck. But
And I always just say, let me know one way or the other, right? If it's a no,
yeah,
it's a
Mhm.
no, right? But just
yeah,
Yeah.
you just leave me just
yeah,
wondering, had a conversation and you think it went okay, but you don't know. I never predict how I feel it goes, right? Because it's very subjective. I could have
yeah,
feel it went well, and the other person could have feel like, oh, he was horrible at answering these questions. So yeah, I just, but just the whole common courtesy thing is just, I don't know,
yeah,
it's out the window.
totally. Sherry, welcome. We are about to wrap up. Is there a reason you're joining late? Oh, Sherry, can you hear me? Sherry? We're about to wrap up. I hope you're not joining because I miscommunicated the time. If that's the case, please let me know so I can correct it. Um,
No worries. I'm happy to
o-
join next week.
okay, awesome. Did you was there any miscommunication on my part about the time for this week?
I don't think so. I'm in Hawaii, so I think it's because of daylight savings. I think I had it wrong in my calendar. So I
Oh,
think it's
okay,
it's
okay,
changed. Yes. Yeah.
okay, awesome. We're about to wrap up. You missed a great conversation here, but
No
we'll pick
worries.
up
Happy to
next
join
week.
next week.
All right,
Thanks.
awesome. All right. Thank you guys.
All
Appreciate
right,
you. Thanks for
thank
all the
you.
input to my questions as well.
Sure,
I will do that. If you guys don't have questions for me, I'll have questions for you, and
that
maybe it'll
sounds good.
stimulate a valuable conversation for everybody to learn from. So
Yeah, I think this has been good for me.
thank you guys. We'll see you next
All
week.
right,
All right.
all
All right.
right. See you, Eric.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
But